Six Miami firefighters were fired for hanging a noose around a black colleague's family photo. The six firefighters also defaced the photo with penises and other sexually explicit drawings. Now, keep in mind these are grown individuals. Now, part of the reason why I wanted to do this story is, of course, we're seeing yet another act of anti-black, white supremacy, racism going on in America, and in the world in general. But there's a unique or interesting aspect of this story that isn't all too interesting if you're familiar with coonism and coonery. Right? Because, of course, there was some coonery involved in this story. Now, if you pay close attention, you'll notice that this says six Miami firefighters, and they don't specify the races of the firefighters, but they do specify that what he did to the black colleague. Now, the reason why they can't say six white Miami firefighters is because all of them aren't white. Well, specifically, one of them isn't white. So here's a picture of all six of them. Now, as you can see, that'll jump out to you immediately is that of these people practicing this racism and anti-blackness towards this black lieutenant, okay, this wasn't just a regular firefighter. These men felt like they could do it to a black lieutenant. And I think that's important as it shows that, you can rise as far as you want into the ranks and become as big or have one of the biggest positions that you can have in this whatever particular organization you decide to join, along with Caucasoid Devils, and they'll still treat you like the regular average Negro. They don't really care about your position or how hard or how much you fought to get to where you got to. They're still gonna treat you with the disregard of the average black person, which is why I say you should always put black first. A lot of people will join different organizations and groups, and suddenly, particularly black people, start putting these groups above black people and not realizing that you're still a black person, regardless of whatever accolade you want to achieve or whatever group you decide to join. You're still a black person, and coons are still coons. For instance, this frog faced gentleman right here, who I'm not exactly sure if he drew the picture or if he hung the noose, but apparently he was involved in some way. And this is why I call coonery a mental illness, because you have to be mentally ill. For you to be aware that they were putting something like this, which is detrimental to the existence of black people while you being a black individual, you have to be nothing short of retarded. You know what I mean? You have to be retarded. I don't really understand why a black person would see. Because listen, had they were just being, the typical white assholes and being disrespectful and anti-black, just like they always do in general, and were just drawing pictures on his stuff and defacing and disrespecting his things, that would be one thing. That would be just typical of them not respecting the authority of any black person in any position ever. You know, that would be typical. But the fact that they would hang something like they would put a noose on his property, indicating that harkens back to a history of violence, particularly perpetrated by them against us, where we were being destroyed and mangled and maimed and we're being killed in some of the most brutal fashions imaginable. And for some black man to sit there and be in on it, you know what I'm saying? A black man who this violence was perpetrated against, how can you not see that as a mental illness? Because don't all beings, like creatures, insects, everything, have a natural instinct to preserve themselves, to want to be alive? Don't all beings have that? If you didn't have the natural instinct to want to be alive, wouldn't that make you wouldn't that show that you have some kind of mental deficiency? So obviously this person has a mental deficiency, a mental disorder, a mental illness, and it's called coonery. Okay? It's called coonism. All right? You know how you can look at a Down syndrome person and you can tell that they have some type of illness or whatever? You can look at this guy and you can see the coonery in his face. You know this man is going home to a white woman at night. You know what I'm saying? I can almost guarantee this man is going home to a white woman at night. I guarantee it. To sit here with these demonic, pale skinned, disgusting individuals and practice this, I mean, the audacity. But what I really, when I was doing this story, I hadn't even looked at the picture. I didn't even know that there was a coon involved in this at that point when I was determining that I was going to do this story. Because what I really wanted to talk about was, black people joining these organizations or being a part of these different groups, such as the police or firefighters or the army, and then still dealing with white supremacy, regardless of these groups claiming you to be their brother and your only identity being that you're a part of their group. You know what I'm saying? Like they strip away your individual identity in a lot of these groups, particularly the military. And we already just saw recently that a sergeant had to come out and had to basically reprimand his parts of the army because they were over here putting out signs that say nigger. And we even saw another study that said that there's a growing concern about the white supremacists that are in these forces, that are in the military. There's a growing fear of that. Yet we still have black people continuing to join these groups and these organizations and putting their people beneath them or after them. You know what I'm saying? When we saw that, was it a sergeant or a lieutenant that was killed? I'm not remembering his name at this moment. It was like we know the story with the widow. The black widow was a black soldier, and Trump was very disrespectful to not only the fallen soldier but to the widow as well, and had a little regard for him because he didn't really see him as so he didn't really group him. He saw him as black first. Plain and simple. He saw him as black first. Just like these guys didn't see their lieutenant, see him as a lieutenant, as this leader in their group. They saw him as black first, which is why they chose to deface his property with the noose. And that particular, they didn't just randomly do some random shit. They did stuff pertaining to him being black because they see him as black first, which black people refuse to understand that we, no matter what group or whatever force or organization you want to be a part of, as the people beneath you, below you, or next to you are going to view you as black first, and you need to get it in your head that you should view yourself as black first as well. You know what I'm saying? We can't expect that kind of behavior from coons. We know that coons, they've already bent the knee to white supremacy. They're already in league with white supremacists because they're just mentally ill. They're doing something that's detrimental to them and us, and that's behavior that to be expected from them. But the average black person is going to have to learn that you need to view yourself as black first, because no matter what position or how high or whatever organization that you think that you're a part of, the people in the group are going to view you as black first. Plain and simple.